Wealth doesn't start in your wallet, it starts in your mind. Mental Millionaire is a guide to reshaping the way you think about money, success, and opportunity. It reveals how the right mindset can turn ordinary habits into extraordinary results, showing that discipline, focus, and resilience are far more powerful than luck or talent. This book is not about chasing quick riches. It's about building the mental foundation that makes lasting wealth inevitable. Chapter 1. The Mindset That Builds Wealth. If you want to be rich long-term, the first battlefield is inside your head. The habits, narratives, and tiny choices you make every day compound into fortune or failure long before any investment does. Start this chapter with a blunt question. What do you believe about money right now? Most people hold invisible assumptions. Money is scarce, risk is dangerous, success is a lottery ticket that quietly shape their behavior. The fundamental lesson of Mental Millionaire is that thinking like a wealthy person is not arrogance or luck. It is a practical architecture of thoughts that produces repeatable decisions. Wealthy thinking begins with 3 commitments. First, commit to patience. Understand that small, consistent actions over years beat sporadic brilliance. Second, commit to humility. Recognize how randomness and luck influence outcomes, so you avoid reckless confidence. Third, commit to responsibility. Let your choices, not your circumstances, determine your trajectory. These are not slogans, they are operational rules that change daily behavior. To make them concrete, examine the stories you tell yourself when money appears or disappears. Do you interpret a windfall as proof you're extraordinary and therefore entitled to splurge? Do you treat a setback as a personal failure that proves you should quit? Reframe both. Treat gains as resources to preserve and multiply, not as signals to elevate your lifestyle instantly. Treat losses as data, not identity. What failed, what could be controlled, and what was random. This mental shift reduces impulsive reactions, and it protects the single most powerful lever in finance: time. Time allows compounding to reward consistent behavior. Impatience erodes it. Next, cultivate a taste for delayed gratification by designing everyday tests. Start with a 30-day challenge. Each time you feel the urge to buy a non-essential, wait 48 hours. Track how many urges pass. This trains a mind to tolerate discomfort, and discomfort is the raw material of wealth. Also, practice future voting. Make one decision today that privileges long-term optionality, automate savings, schedule learning, or decline a tempting purchase. Over months, these votes aggregate into a life engineered for leverage. Wealthy thinking also includes an identity change. See yourself as a steward of resources, not merely a consumer. When you adopt stewardship, spending decisions are filtered through whether they increase or decrease freedom and optionality. Does this purchase increase my options next year? If not, postpone. Finally, build a calibration habit. Every quarter, review what you believed at the start and what reality taught you. Update your beliefs when evidence accumulates. The wealthy don't cling to narrative comfort, they adjust. By the end of this chapter, you should have 3 practical rituals: a daily 48-hour cooling rule on discretionary spending, a weekly future vote, where you make one choice that buys optionality, and a quarterly belief audit where you write down 3 assumptions and then test them. Chapter 2. Habits, Routines, and the Mechanics of Compounding. Once mindset is set, the question becomes mechanical. Which daily habits actually produce wealth over decades? This chapter focuses on designing routines that convert intentions into automatic actions, because the wealthy don't rely on occasional discipline. They remove the need for it. Start with the most boring truth. The savings rate is the engine of compounding more than any exotic investment. The difference between saving 10% and 20% of income compounds into enormous future flexibility. To make savings effortless, automate it. Schedule transfers on payday so the money never appears in your spendable account. Treat savings as a non-negotiable recurring bill. Pay yourself first. Next, regiment your time. Allocate the highest energy hours to activities that increase optionality, learning skill sets, building businesses, networking. Protect those hours ruthlessly by eliminating low-value obligations. Use a simple daily template: 2 hours of deep work, 30 minutes of learning, and 1 quality social interaction that expands your network. This template builds capital beyond cash. Human capital and social capital compound too. Habit stacking is another technique. Attach a new wealth habit to an existing routine. If you already make coffee every morning, attach a 10-minute reading session about investing to that moment. Over weeks, the new habit will feel as natural as the coffee. Also adopt the small win principle. Break large projects into tiny, unavoidable steps. Want to write a book for passive income? Commit to 300 words a day. The small win creates momentum, and momentum accumulates into outcomes that feel inevitable. Routines must include safeguards against lifestyle inflation. Create a rule. When income rises, increase savings rate by a fixed fraction rather than immediately upgrading consumption. This rule takes advantage of windfalls without letting them erode long-term freedom. Another critical habit is diversification, not as an abstract portfolio concept, but as a behavioral shield. Diversify income streams, part-time consulting, royalties, investments, so short-term shocks don't force catastrophic sales. Each additional income stream is a redundancy that allows you to tolerate volatility and hence stay invested in long-term growth. Learning habits matter too. Schedule micro-learning every day, 20 minutes of reading, a podcast episode, or a deliberate practice session. Knowledge compounds like money. What you learn today increases your earning and investment decisions decades later. Chapter 3. Risk, Resilience, and the Psychology of Failure. Risk is both the pathway to wealth and the greatest threat to it. The difference between those who prosper and those who perish is not avoiding risk, but managing it intelligently. Start by redefining risk. It is not merely volatility, it is the chance of permanent loss. Volatility is paper loss. Risk is ruin. The mental millionaire frames decisions through the lens of survival first. Build a margin of safety, an emergency fund, conservative leverage, and hedges, so you can pursue upside without risking annihilation. This is practical, not cowardly. People confuse bravery with recklessness. True courage is choosing asymmetric bets, where downside is controlled and upside is meaningful. To cultivate resilience, practice stress inoculation. Expose yourself regularly to control discomfort so you learn to operate under pressure. Cold showers, public speaking, taking on slightly overwhelming projects. These experiences increase your tolerance to uncertainty and reduce the paralysis that accompanies real financial challenges. A key mental trick is to separate outcome from decision quality. Bad outcomes happen to competent people because randomness exists. Evaluate your choices based on process and risk management, not solely on results. Keep a decision journal. Before making big bets, write why you are doing it, what could go wrong, and what you will do if it does. Review outcomes later and judge whether the decision-making process was sound. This builds wisdom over time and reduces the emotional reaction to setbacks. Diversification and optionality are practical tools for resilience. Own different asset classes, maintain multiple income channels, and keep optionality, small reserves of time, money, and health that let you pivot. Optionality is the psychological advantage of freedom. The less forced your choice is, the less you must panic when volatility hits. Another powerful habit is to formalize contingency plans. For every major endeavor, define the exit conditions and the recovery playbook. If a business drops 30% in revenue, what immediate actions preserve cash flow? If markets fall 40%, how will you rebalance? Having a plan reduces emotional selling. Emotional regulation techniques are essential. When markets convulse or personal crises strike, your nervous system will push you to act. Practice breathing techniques, short meditations, and cognitive reframing so you can pause and choose rather than react. Finally, build social resilience. Wealth is not built in a vacuum. Networks provide capital, advice, and opportunities. But networks also buffer stress. Trusted advisors, mentors, and peers who have experienced downturns share coping mechanisms and reduce isolation during hard times. The mental millionaire insists on structural resilience. It's not about heroics in crisis, but about designing life so you rarely require heroics. When resilience is built into your system, risk becomes acceptable and even productive. Implement decision journals, contingency planning, optionality buffers, stress inoculation, and social networks. These will keep you present when the inevitable storms arrive and let compounding continue uninterrupted. Chapter 4. Cognitive biases and better decision-making. You will never outinvest human bias unless you deliberately fight it. This chapter is a field manual for recognizing and neutralizing the cognitive errors that sabotage financial lives: overconfidence, loss aversion, confirmation bias, recency bias, social proof. Each of these quietly steers decisions toward short-term drama and away from slow, compounding gains. Overconfidence makes you overtrade and take concentrated bets that feel thrilling until they fail. The antidote is humility and constraint. Set position limits, cap leverage, and require external review for extreme moves. Loss aversion, where losses feel roughly twice as painful as equivalent gains feel pleasurable, leads to panicked selling and missed recoveries. Combat it by reframing. Calculate worst-case scenarios and how you would live through them. When the emotional reaction hits, your rational plan is already written. Confirmation bias causes you to seek only evidence that supports your current view. Solve this by playing devil's advocate. Force a counter-argument at every major decision, or by having a trusted critic whose job is to find flaws. Recency bias makes the latest headlines overweighted. Remember that rare tales, not recent trends, often dominate returns. Build rules that ignore noise, time-based rebalancing, fixed contributions, and systematic investment plans. Social proof is powerful. People mimic peers and influencers without considering context. To resist it, define personal criteria for actions. Ask whether a recommended move fits your goals, risk tolerance, and timeline. Decision architecture matters. Reduce temptation by automating where possible and adding friction where necessary. Want to stop impulse trading? Add a 24-hour hold policy for discretionary trades. Want to curb lifestyle inflation? Automate savings increases before you see your paycheck. Use commitment devices, pre-sign checks to savings, publish goals with accountability partners, or contractual obligations to align future behavior with present intentions. Another mental tool is probabilistic thinking. Instead of seeking certainty, attach probabilities to outcomes and act when the expected value, given your risk tolerance, is attractive. This reduces emotional swings and encourages repeated, small, positive expected value decisions. Finally, cultivate the habit of slow thinking for big decisions. When stakes are high, delay immediate action, gather diverse input, and run small experiments first. Many bad financial moves are made under pressure. Slow thinking converts panic into planning. Mastering biases is not about becoming infallible. It's about reducing systematic errors so your long-term rate of right decisions increases. Apply rules, automate, use commitment devices, and require probabilistic checks. These modest engineering choices upgrade your decision-making far more than vague resolutions ever will. Chapter 5. Systems, Environment, and Social Leverage. The final step from good thinking to sustained wealth is building systems that do the heavy lifting for you, structures that produce desirable outcomes even when motivation wanes. Mental millionaires design environments that make the right choices easy and the wrong ones costly. Start by simplifying complexity. Reduce decision fatigue through standardized routines and rules. Create a minimalist set of financial accounts with clear purposes: emergency fund, long-term investments, short-term goals, and automate flows between them. Use technology to enforce discipline, automatic transfers, rounding up savings apps, and calendar blocks for deep work are not cheats. They are leverage that a millionaire mindset uses without drama. Social environment matters too. Surround yourself with people who model long-term thinking, mentors, partners, and friends whose standards elevate your own. This is not superficial networking. It is identity contagion. You will behave like the people you spend time with. So choose wisely. Institutionalize accountability. Report progress monthly to a mentor group, or create a public ledger of goals. Accountability converts private intentions into public commitments, increasing follow-through. Build redundancy into income and capital structures. Multiple revenue streams from investments, side businesses, royalties reduce the chance that one failure ruins everything. Redundancy is an insurance policy built into your strategy, and it allows you to take measured risks elsewhere. Another lever is learning systems. Prioritize perpetual skill acquisition. Set a schedule for acquiring complementary skills: sales if you're a product person, investing fundamentals if you run a business, so you continually enhance optionality. Finally, plan your legacy intentionally. Wealth without purpose is fragile. The allocation of resources to family, community, or projects ties money to meaning and reduces the temptation of wasteful consumption. Draft a values-based financial plan. Define what money is for, who benefits, and how decisions align with long-term impact. Systems translate identity into action. When environment, rules, social context, and automation are aligned, your best behavior becomes the default behavior. The Mental Millionaire's final promise is practical. Design your life so that even when you are tired, stressed, or distracted, the architecture you built years earlier keeps compounding value on your behalf. Chapter 6. Leverage, Scale, and the Ethics of Growth. Leverage is the accelerant of wealth. It multiplies outcomes, compresses timelines, and turns small advantages into outsized results. But it is also a two-edged sword that amplifies mistakes and can produce catastrophic ruin when misused. In this chapter, we strip leverage down to its practical forms: financial leverage, time leverage, and human leverage, and build a moral and mental framework for using each responsibly. Financial leverage is the obvious one: borrowing to magnify returns. The mental millionaire does not demonize debt, but reframes it as a tool that must be wielded only in contexts where downside is controlled and optionality preserved. The first rule is simple: never lever yourself into a state where a single negative outcome forces liquidation. If your mortgage, margin loan, or business debt can trigger a forced sale under realistic downturns, you have mistaken leverage for gambling. The second rule addresses asymmetry. Use leverage only when upside meaningfully exceeds downside and when downside can be limited by structure, non-recourse debt, limited liability entities, fixed cost coverage, or conservative stress testing. Chapter 7. Entrepreneurship, Value Creation, and Flow. Entrepreneurship is often romanticized as a route to riches, but the mental millionaire reframes it as a disciplined method for creating value at scale. This chapter dismantles myths, overnight success, solitary genius, and luck as the primary driver, and replaces them with a playbook that elevates product-market fit, margin design, and psychological stamina. Real entrepreneurship starts with relentless attention to the customer. Create something people want repeatedly, and you have the raw material for compounding income. The next principle is margin design. Profitability is the oxygen of optionality. Many founders confuse revenue with wealth. High revenue with thin margins is fragile because scaling amplifies complexity and cash needs. Mental millionaires design businesses with built-in optionality, low fixed costs, modular services, and products that can be incrementally improved and sold across markets. They also engineer pricing that captures value rather than chasing market share at loss. Another central theme is the iteration loop. Test quickly, fail small, learn fast. The chapter lays out concrete experiments, minimum viable offers, pre-sales, and cohort testing that reduce the capital intensity of discovery. Psychological flow matters too. Sustaining entrepreneurship requires rituals that protect energy and attention. Set non-negotiable deep work windows, rotate responsibilities to avoid burnout, and institutionalize decision thresholds to prevent endless tinkering. People mistakes are the most common ruinous factor. Hire slowly and fire quickly. Codify core values and use them as a hiring filter. Delegate decision rights with clear boundaries so talent can act without waiting on approvals. The chapter emphasizes optionality in exit planning as well, having multiple potential monetization paths, recurring revenue, licensing, strategic. Partnerships preserves upside while reducing the pressure to cash out at the worst moment. Mentorship and community are practical multipliers. Entrepreneurs who share war stories, refer customers, and offer tactical advice create a networked safety net. The mental millionaire insists on balancing audacious vision with discipline. Aim for big problems, but solve them with repeatable processes. The final exercise invites entrepreneurs to build a resilience blueprint, a one-page plan that lists 3 core revenue streams, 3 margin improvement tactics, and 3 contingency actions for revenue shocks. This turns abstract ambition into a tactical map that protects growth and makes success sustainable rather than accidental. Chapter 8. Negotiation, Influence, and the Art of Persuasion. Wealth accrues not only through saving and investing, but through the microeconomic bargains you make every day. Salary negotiations, partnership terms, supplier deals, and the informal exchanges that shape opportunity flow. This chapter recasts negotiation as an ethical craft and provides a toolbox for securing better outcomes without burning bridges. The first principle is preparation. Know your BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement, the other party's incentives, and the minimum acceptable terms for you. Preparation reduces ego and improvisation under pressure. Second, build influence before the ask. Reputation, small favors, and consistent value. Delivery create credit that you can draw on when negotiating important terms. The mental millionaire models persuasion that respects reciprocity. Ask with clarity, offer with generosity, and anchor conversations around shared outcomes rather than zero-sum wins. Tactics are practical. Use calibrated questions to reveal needs. What would make this partnership ideal for you? Employ conditional concessions to trade away low-value items for high-value ones and set phased agreements to reduce the risk perception for counterparties. Framing matters. Present proposals as opportunities for mutual upside rather than threats to the other side. Power dynamics are real, but they are often less fixed than they appear. Small structural moves, changing timing, introducing a neutral third party, or offering optionality in contract terms, reshape leverage. Ethical red lines exist. Never secure advantage by deception. Long-term optionality depends on trust. The chapter also covers salary negotiation for professionals. Anchor high with data, state your value in outcome terms, and use a range plus conditions format that leaves room for employer constraints while protecting your floor. Finally, practice micro-negotiations daily, prices with freelancers, project scopes, and timeline adjustments to hone skill without high stakes. Negotiation becomes a habit of structuring exchanges so that value is recognized and shared. The mental millionaire sees persuasion not as manipulation, but as the ability to align incentives so that agreements last and opportunities compound. Chapter 9. Time, Attention, and the Quiet. Power of Slow Progress. Time is the non-renewable resource that underwrites all compounding. This chapter reframes the typical wealth conversation from possessions to temporal autonomy, how choices about work, sleep, relationships, and focus create the conditions for compounding to work. The first lesson: control over your attention is the most fungible asset you own. Distraction fragments effort and kills deep work that produces leverage. Guard your attention with ritualized boundaries, single task blocks, notification hygiene, and physical environments that signal focus. The second lesson: pace your ambition. Quick wins are seductive but often hollow. Slow progress forged by daily discipline compounds into irreversible advantages. The mental millionaire prescribes time arbitrage, doing today what others postpone, so that future days are freer for higher value opportunities. For example, complete foundational tasks when energy is high to unlock afternoons for relationship building or creative work. Rest is strategic. Overwork corrodes decision quality and increases risk. Schedule deliberate recovery, sleep, sabbaticals, and periods of low cognitive demand to preserve long-term performance. The chapter also addresses opportunity cost. Every yes is a no. Use a simple decision filter for commitments. Does this action increase optionality, protect freedom, or build meaningful capacity? If not, decline. Small administrative habits, email batching, templated responses, delegated scheduling, buy back hours you can invest in compounding activities. Chapter 10. Legacy, Stewardship, and the Meaning of Enough Wealth. Without meaning eats itself. The final chapter brings the reader into the ethical and existential terrain of money. How you steward resources, influence future generations, and define enough. The mental millionaire insists that legacy is a combination of financial assets, cultural norms, and the institutions you leave behind. Begin by defining your purpose. Is your money a tool for freedom, a platform for change, or a buffer for your family? Clear purpose informs allocation. Stewardship requires translating values into policies. How you give, invest, and bequeath should reflect not impulse but intention. Practical mechanisms include donor-advised funds, family governance charters, and mission portfolios that align capital with social impact while preserving optionality. The chapter explores the psychology of inheritance. Handing wealth without preparation often destroys incentives and character. Chapter 11. Money and Relationships. How wealth habits shape the people around you. Money does not exist in a vacuum. It lives inside families, partnerships, and communities, and the mental habits you develop around wealth ripple outward through the people you love. This chapter begins with a hard but essential truth. The way you think about money will either strengthen relationships or quietly corrode them. Too often people treat finances as a private spreadsheet while their emotional economy, expectations, resentments, and unspoken agreements runs on outdated assumptions. The mental millionaire insists that financial wisdom includes social design. Start by making money conversations routine and non-judgmental. Schedule a monthly money meeting with your partner or household where the agenda is simple: cash flow, upcoming decisions, shocks to expect, and one long-term choice to discuss. Normalizing the language of money reduces taboo and prevents cinematic fights that erupt at moments of stress. The chapter provides a model for that meeting: a 5-minute mood check, a 10-minute numbers review, a 10-minute planning slot, and a 5-minute commitment to one action. Chapter 12. Common wealth traps and the cognitive antidotes. As you climb, clever traps await. This chapter catalogues the psychological pitfalls that turn promising financial paths into slow leaks: lifestyle inflation, social comparison, illusion of control, over-optimization, and the seductive lure of one big score. Each trap has predictable mechanics and an equally practical antidote. Take lifestyle inflation. Income rises, expectations rise proportionally, and the long-term savings rate stagnates or declines. The mental antidote is a pre-commitment rule. Every income increase triggers a predefined allocation: a % to savings, a % to learning, a % to enjoyment, so that lifestyle improves only at a sustainable glide path. Social comparison is addressed by creating reference groups intentionally. Who are you competing with and why? Replace the default comparator, your neighborhood, colleagues, or social feed, with a chosen set of role models aligned to your values. People who prioritize time, autonomy, or impact rather than ostentation. The chapter then dismantles the illusion of control, where decision-makers extend overconfidence into fragile positions. Chapter 13. Practical Investing. Principles for the Mental Millionaire. Investing can appear technical, but at its core it is behavioral engineering practiced over time. This chapter presents a compact set of investing principles tailored to a mental millionaire: margin-first allocation, principle-based diversification, boredom as a virtue, and the architecture of patience. Start with margin-first allocation. Prioritize building a margin of safety, cash reserves, low fixed costs, and liquidity before pursuing aggressive returns. This preserves optionality and reduces forced selling. Principle-based diversification means owning assets that respond to different real-world drivers: businesses, bonds, real assets, and human capital. Avoid superficial diversification that merely collects correlated securities. Aim for economic diversity so that negative shocks in one domain do not cascade across your entire net worth. Boredom as a virtue flips cultural incentives. The best investments often feel uneventful. The mental millionaire trains themselves to find comfort in slow, predictable compounding rather than the dopamine hit of daily market movement. The chapter also treats fees, taxes, and friction as real enemies of long-term performance and shows how low-cost index exposure, tax-aware strategies, and minimizing turnover can vastly increase net outcomes. Chapter 14. Scaling Influence, Mentorship, Community, and Teaching, What You Learn. Wealth accelerates when you learn quickly and teach even faster. This chapter explores the multiplier effect of mentorship and community, how the right teachers compress decades of trial and error into a fraction of that time, and how teaching consolidates knowledge while building reputation and opportunities. The mental millionaire constructs a three-tier learning ecosystem: mentors above, peers alongside, and mentees below. Mentors provide perspective and access. Peers provide accountability and co-learning. Mentees force you to articulate and refine ideas. The chapter gives a practical blueprint to cultivate each tier. Identify 2 mentors whose trajectories you respect and ask for a single-hour conversation framed as a learning interview. Create a mastermind of 4 to 6 peers who commit to monthly accountability and practical problem-solving, and take on one mentee to teach and systematize what you know. Public teaching is emphasized as a strategic act. Writing essays, hosting workshops, or creating short courses not only clarifies your thinking, but also attracts opportunities and builds reputational capital without selling out your time. The book provides scripts for outreach, lesson templates, and ethical norms for mentorship, confidentiality, reciprocity, and long-term commitment. Community selection is another practical skill. Choose groups that reward the behavior you want to emulate. Long-term thinking, generosity, craftsmanship, rather than groups that primarily display status. The chapter also discusses compensation of relationships. Financial investments in mentorship, paid coaching, course fees can be high return if structured as targeted, time-boxed experiments. Finally, the act of teaching is framed as a cognitive ritual. Explain a concept in 5 different formats: 1-page summary, 5-minute talk, visual, diagram, Q&A session, and a short checklist. This multimodal teaching anchors knowledge deeply and reveals blind spots. Chapter 15. A Tactical 12-Month Plan. Turning mental strategy into financial trajectory. Ideas without execution are comforts, not change. The final chapter is a tactical 12-month plan that translates the prior mental frameworks into measurable actions. It is organized into quarters, each with clear objectives, rituals, and checklists, so the reader can move from intention to measurable progress. Quarter 1 is Foundation and Stabilization. Set up automatic savings to reach your target margin, 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Implement the 48-hour cooling rule for discretionary purchases. Establish the monthly money meeting and conduct a full financial inventory: income, liabilities, subscriptions, and recurring obligations. Add 2 learning rituals: a weekly 20-minute investment read and a monthly mentor call. Quarter 2 is Leverage and Habit Consolidation. Automate increasing savings by at least 2% on any income growth. Create one secondary income experiment, consulting, micro-product, or content piece, and commit to 90 days of minimum viable action, and perform the first leverage audit mapping financial, time, and human leverage with contingency plans. Quarter 3 is Portfolio and Growth. Formalize your investment map, implement the diversification and rebalancing calendar, and run 2 staged entrepreneurial experiments with capped downside. Also, scale social systems. Join or form a mastermind and begin public teaching in a low-stakes format, a short webinar or newsletter series. Quarter 4 is reflection, optimization, and legacy planning. Conduct a year-end belief audit, measure progress against quarter objectives, adjust the 12-month plan for compounding impact, and draft a simple legacy and stewardship plan, values charter, basic estate preferences, and a first draft of how to pass skills, not just money, to beneficiaries. Each quarter contains daily and weekly rituals, daily micro-learning and one deep work block, weekly spending and habit reviews, monthly mentor and money meetings, quarterly rebalancing and belief audits. The chapter insists on metrics that matter: savings rate, optionality score, a composite of liquidity, income diversification, and time autonomy, and learning velocity, hours invested in high-return skill building. Chapter 16. Mastering Emotional Intelligence with Money. The greatest fortunes are built not only with analysis and strategies, but with emotional control. This chapter emphasizes that wealth management is 80% psychology and 20% mechanics. Emotional intelligence means recognizing your triggers: fear during downturns, greed during booms, envy when others seem to be progressing faster. The mental millionaire cultivates self-awareness by journaling every financial decision along with the emotions present at that moment. Over time, this builds a pattern map. Do you overspend when stressed? Do you sell too early when nervous? By catching these cycles, you can insert rational systems before emotions hijack behavior. Techniques include meditation, delayed decision rituals, and reframing losses as tuition fees for wisdom. A central idea is emotional decoupling. Wealth decisions should be governed by values and strategy, not emotional weather. Those who master emotional intelligence transform volatility into opportunity, because where others panic, they remain grounded. Chapter 17. The Compound Effect of Daily Disciplines. Wealth is rarely created in dramatic bursts. It emerges from small, consistent choices compounded over years. This chapter explores how micro-disciplines in health, relationships, learning, and money reinforce each other to create exponential results. The book stresses keystone habits: morning routines, weekly reflections, automated investments, continuous learning, which serve as anchors for resilience. By focusing on 1% improvements across multiple domains, the mental millionaire allows time to magnify the effects. The reader is given a framework called the 4 daily pillars: movement, stillness, learning, and contribution. Each, practiced in small doses, ensures that the wealth you build is sustainable because it is paired with energy, clarity, knowledge, and purpose. This chapter insists that the daily is more powerful than the dramatic, because the daily is repeatable and compounding is inevitable. Chapter 18. Designing Wealth That Serves Freedom, Not Prison. Many people unconsciously design their financial lives into cages: jobs they hate, assets that own them, lifestyles that demand constant maintenance. This chapter argues that wealth should be a tool for liberation, not entrapment. The core question becomes, does this decision increase or decrease my freedom? The mental millionaire runs every choice through this filter, ensuring that assets are simple, portable, and resilient. Complex investments, oversized houses, or fragile businesses may appear impressive, but often shrink autonomy. The chapter urges the reader to prioritize time-rich wealth over status-driven wealth. Examples include focusing on cash flow rather than illiquid displays, and building skills that generate income independent of location. Freedom-driven wealth also includes flexibility, being able to pivot careers, live in different countries, or reduce workload without collapse. By designing wealth this way, money becomes an ally of lifestyle rather than a master demanding obedience. Chapter 19. The Inner Game of Abundance. Scarcity is not merely a lack of resources, but a mindset that sabotages even the wealthy. This chapter highlights how mental millionaires cultivate abundance thinking, a belief that opportunities multiply when pursued with creativity and generosity. Scarcity minds hoard, protect, and fear loss, while abundant minds build, share, and expect expansion. This shift is not naive optimism but strategic psychology. By collaborating, teaching, and giving, you attract networks, knowledge, and chances unavailable to hoarders. Practical exercises include gratitude, journaling, structured giving, donating time or resources monthly, and surrounding yourself with people who celebrate success rather than envy it. The chapter also warns that abundance without boundaries becomes recklessness. Balance comes from combining generous outreach with disciplined financial frameworks. Ultimately, abundance is about believing that wealth is a positive-sum game and that your growth can empower rather than threaten others. Chapter 20. Leaving a Legacy Beyond Money. The final chapter explores legacy, not just in assets but in values, stories, and character. True wealth is not what you accumulate, but what survives you and enriches others. The mental millionaire designs legacy intentionally, asking, what values do I want carried forward? What lessons do I want my children or community to embody? What example does my life model? The book recommends writing a wealth letter, a personal document outlining not only financial provisions but guiding principles, mistakes made, and hopes for the future. Teaching by example is stressed. Live generosity, resilience, and stewardship so others inherit habits, not just accounts. Legacy also includes societal contribution, funding causes, building institutions, mentoring young people. When wealth is framed as stewardship rather than possession, it gains meaning and durability. The mental millionaire closes this chapter with a challenge. Measure success not by net worth at death, but by the lives uplifted while you lived and the principles you set in motion for those who follow. Conclusion. The journey of the mental millionaire is less about numbers and more about mastery of mind. Wealth built on discipline, clarity, and generosity endures. Remember, the hardest thing is not acquiring money but shaping the mindset that sustains it. If you found value in this summary, support our channel Audiobook library by subscribing today. Your journey to wisdom is only beginning.